Welcome to another jewelry design and goldsmithing video. Today we're going to be looking at the design and creation of this wedding set. It's got a really unique story and it's absolutely a beautiful piece, so I'm excited to get right into it. To start out, we're going to be looking at the CAD design for this project. In this case, the customer brought me his stone. So as a first step, I scanned it into the computer and I made an outline in my CAD program. As I outlined the stone, I kind of rotated around, found the best orientation, and also made sure that it was parallel on each side. Put it into place on the ring. I skipped a lot of the design process on the ring because this particular one took me several revisions. But I did want to get this part here where I'm showing how I created the V-end prongs that go around each corner of this trillion cut stone. Going back a little bit, this is how I made the shank. The leaves that go into this design. I added some texture and some curves, got rid of some of that excess. And then I built the settings for the diamonds that go in on the side. Copied it over to the other side. And that's my finished engagement ring. So here I made an outline in order to run a toolpath, and this is going to tell my mill exactly how to make this piece. So I took some measurements, wrote those down so I wouldn't forget them. And then I cut a wax blank and made it the correct length, and then mounted it on the lathe to make it the proper diameter. Once it's to the proper diameter, then I cut in the side here to make sure that it runs flat and true. Once that's the measurement that I want, I mount it on the mill. And I run the toolpath. Once that's finished, I head on back to the lathe. And I start cutting out the inside of the ring. Then I'll keep cutting it out little by little until it's the proper size, and at that point the ring will fall off of the rest of that wax blank. Just like that. Now by hand with a needle file, I'm going to remove the sharp edges, and I'm also going to remove some of the excess bulk on the inside of the ring. The mill has a tendency to make the bottom of the ring splay out, but for aesthetics and also comfort, I like to make sure that that's kind of rounded out and pointed more inwards. I'm also cleaning up some of the extra slag that's on the inside of that trillion cut setting. Now I'm going to prepare my wax for casting. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a wax sprue, and this is going to allow the metal to actually flow into the cast and fill out this ring, and you'll see a little bit more how that's going to happen later. In this particular case, since those leaves present kind of a heavy part of the ring, I need to make my sprue actually go through the center of the ring and into those leaves. That way I won't have any issues with the metal flowing through the casting. I want to make sure that this sprue is as smooth as possible. Again, that way I'm not going to have any issues with metal flowing through. Once the sprue is complete, then I weigh the wax, and that's going to help me calculate how much gold I need to cast. Then I mount my wax onto this rubber base. And attach it to the flask. I put this tape on both so that I can identify which piece this is in case I'm doing multiple castings, and also it helps prevent the investment from pouring out the top. Now we're mixing up the water and investment powder. Once it's mixed, we pour it into a rubber bowl and put that into our vacuum chamber. This is going to remove any air that's trapped inside the investment, which could cause problems with casting. Once it's done, we pour it into the flask. And then we put it in the vacuum chamber one more time, and this time we agitate it as well. Then we set them aside to dry. Once the investment's dried, we take off the rubber base. We want to remove any excess investment that's on the bottom or on the top, so we do that here with a knife. And then we carve that wax weight directly into the investment. That way we don't have a chance of losing it. Next, we put it into the kiln. This is going to both cure the investment and also melt out that wax that we put in there earlier, which is going to leave a void. That void is what the metal is going to go into to fill and create the casting. So here we add our gold into our casting machine. Take our flask, which is somewhere around 1,000 degrees right now. Put that into the casting machine. Make sure everything's lined up and clean. And now the casting machine is heating up. Once that metal is molten, we pour it into the mold. Now we're going to quench it in water, and this is going to dissolve most of that investment. Depending on the properties of the metal that we're casting, we may quench it while it's still hot, or we may wait until it's cooled down to room temperature. Once we've cleaned off the rest of the investment, now the first step is to cut off all those sprues. Now I need to cut the sprues from the inside. The next step is to grind out any excess that I wasn't able to get with the saw blade with this little mini drum sander. Now we put the piece into this needle tumbler, which is basically a bunch of little stainless steel needles that are driven by a magnet. It spins around and gives a nice polish to areas that I couldn't otherwise reach. Now I'm going to drill out some holes underneath where those diamonds are going to be. And that's going to make it so that we can easily clean those diamonds in the future. Now I'm going around the entire ring with a rubber wheel and just smoothing everything out. And again, I'm using my mini drum sander to remove what's left of those sprues as well as any sharp edges. And on the outside of the ring, I'll use a file to smooth everything out. Then I'm going to take a flap sander and get everything really nice and smooth. Now I'm going to put an 18 karat stamp on the inside of the ring. The next step is using a heart burr to cut the seats for the diamonds. One of the beautiful things about this ring is that these diamonds actually came from heirloom jewelry that had been passed down in my client's family. For the first time here, we're starting to get a pretty good close look at the design. So the leaves in this design are actually based off of hazel leaves. And Hazel is the name of my client's fiance. It was a really personal touch that we were able to add to this design. One of the wonderful things about custom jewelry is that we can add really personal touches that you would never be able to get otherwise. For some reason this side was giving me a little bit of trouble, so I actually had to cut those seats a few different times, test fit the diamonds. If they didn't fit, pull them back out, cut again, and so on until they fit properly. And then I use my graver with a beating tool in order to lock those prongs down and make sure those diamonds aren't coming back out. Next, I'm going to get started on setting this Alexandrite. So the first step is to set it in place, see how it fits, see where I need to make cuts, and just kind of get a visual of what I'm going to be doing. Then I'm going to take my heart burr and I'm just going to start taking out some of that metal, starting from the underside of the setting and working my way up. In total, I had to test fit this stone over 30 times in order to make sure that I had the seats cut properly. This is one area where, unfortunately, many jewelers will take a shortcut and they'll just cut too much metal out just to get it in place quickly, and then your setting just won't last as long. Now, because this is a very bellied stone, I'm going to take my ball burr and kind of get rid of some of these straight edges and make them more curved. And now you can see that stone's starting to fit in there right. Still needs to move down on one of those corners, but it's getting close. And also with the ball burr, I'm taking out a spherical section in the corners of each of these prongs. That way, if the ring is ever impacted, it's not going to impact the corner of the stone, which would potentially break it. Now that my stone is sitting the way that I want, I take my pliers and I start squeezing in the edges of those VM prongs. Sorry for the bad shot here. This was a very difficult angle to get, but the stone was still a little bit loose, so I took a different pair of pliers and I actually pulled them downwards in order to lock in that stone. Now I'm taking my rubber wheel, getting rid of my plier marks, and kind of getting closer to the final shape of the prongs that I want. I'm using my graver to make those corners really nice and defined. Now visually the prongs are much lighter and they really complement that stone. I had a little bit of porosity on the inside of the ring, so I filled that in, and now I'm just smoothing that out. And I'm taking a little ball burr by hand to make sure there are no sharp edges on the insides of those diamond cleanout holes. And now I'm polishing the inside of the ring. Here I'm using my saw blade to add definition to the sides of those prongs, which are representing the hazelnuts. And now I'm polishing the outside of the ring, being really careful not to over polish the leaves and lose that detail. And I do one final buff just to make sure everything is thoroughly and evenly polished. As a final step, I'm going to do a rhodium plating, which is going to make this metal a really beautiful bright white, a lot like platinum. The first step is to put it in this electro-cleaning solution. Once that's done, I rinse it off. And put it into the rhodium solution. And here's the finished set. I absolutely love this wedding set, and I'm so grateful to have had a part in this project. This video was already pretty long, so I didn't include footage of making the wedding ring, but if you'd like to see that in a separate video, go ahead and leave a comment and let me know. Congratulations to Andrew and Hazel. I wish you the best. Again, thank you so much for having me be a part of this. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up. It lets me know that you enjoyed it, and it lets YouTube know that it should recommend it to more people, and helps me to create more videos.